On May 21st, I made this terrarium, and 5 months later, it looks like this. Needless to say that this terrarium has undergone a lot of changes, and today we are going to do some maintenance. So I want to start from the beginning and show you how this terrarium has evolved over time. In particular, I'd like to focus on the growth of this particular plant, Coleus, which has grown at a tremendous rate and has surprised me beyond imagination. 1 month into the terrarium's life and Coleus already reached the top, so I had to trim it down. After that, it looked like this. Another month and a half, and to my surprise, it grew back and reached the top again. So I trimmed the plant down to the base again, and it ended up looking like this. Another 2 months later, so at the end of 5 months, it again reached the top and has completely filled the foreground. As we can see that the entire terrarium is quite overgrown and now it's time for some maintenance. The moss has grown quite a bit since the terrarium was made 5 months ago. Also, the roots of the Coleus look very healthy and well established. There is decent amount of condensation on the walls all around, as would be expected from an established terrarium. The peperomia has grown a lot and is also making aerial roots. On this side, the English ivy or the afoy has grown quite a lot and has established itself well. The asparagus fern on the background has grown very dense and lush. Also, its roots are well established and as we can see here are deep into the soil as well as going down into the drainage layer. That is a good sign for a closed terrarium. There's significant amount of gunk deposited on the back wall of the terrarium, but I would say this is quite normal for a 5-month-old terrarium. We're going to have to clean that. The spider plant is also growing beautifully and its leaf has spread all across the terrarium from the back side and also have reached the top. Its roots too are well established as we can see here going down deep into the drainage layer. Over here the peperomia has started to spread everywhere and we can see that its roots are even climbing on the walls of the terrarium. The peperomia on this side has even started climbing the walls of the terrarium by sticking onto it. There is some algae here and there in the soil, but it's not too much, so I wouldn't worry about it. And now time for the famous sniff test. Still smells like a real jungle. So when we open the terrarium from the top, there's decent amount of condensation on the lid of the terrarium, which is to be expected since it's a closed ecosystem. The plants have reached the top of the terrarium and have filled it completely. The growth is so dense that it is impossible to see through without doing some trimming. Here are some cuttings of the Coleus which I took from the past and I have propagated them in water over the last few months. Its roots have established well and they look quite healthy. It's a very good sign for plant propagation. Now let's get to the maintenance and trimming of this terrarium. I only gave the terrarium a few sprays since it's always better to underwater a terrarium than overwater it. Here's the final view of the terrarium after the maintenance session. I think it looks quite nice and very similar to how it all began 5 months ago. Of course, some plants have still grown, like the ficus ginseng in the center. The leaves have grown very tall, but it's still far away from reaching the top, so I did not trim it much. Let's see how the terrarium does after a year or so. I'm very excited to see that. Finally, on the left, as we have seen, are the earlier cuttings which I have already shown, and on the right side are the cuttings from today, and it's all coming from this one single plant. Isn't nature just amazing?